Alexander the Great was undefeated in battle, but even Afghanistan was almost impossible for him to conquer. And there's one tiny country you've probably never heard of that even China can't defeat. And their only defense is nature itself. I'm Mike with List 25, and today I'm counting down 25 countries you'll never conquer, even if you tried. Trying to invade Finland is like trying to fistfight a snowstorm. In 1939, Stalin gave it a shot. Big mistake. The Soviets rolled in expecting a quick win, but instead got shredded by Finnish ski troops in white camo. Even though the Red Army had the numbers, Finland held the line, killed over 120,000 enemy troops, and stayed independent. So, what made it so hard? Well, for starters, their winter. Temperatures drop to negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow piles up to your knees. And then there's the terrain. Endless forests, close to 200,000 lakes, and no easy choke points. Just about every adult has military training and can quickly field hundreds of thousands if needed. Plus, they've now joined NATO. Invade Finland today, and you're fighting half the planet. Then there's Egypt. From a geographical point of view, it's like a fortress. On one side, you've got the Sinai Desert, where invading armies will have to follow well-known routes. On the other side, you've got the Sahara. If you try to invade by land, you'll run out of water before you even get to the Nile. And that's where the real fight would begin. Egypt has the largest military in Africa, over 400,000 active troops, thousands of tanks, and a serious air force. Oh, and Cairo alone has over 20 million people living in it who'd fight like hell to defend it. Add in control of the Suez Canal, the world's shipping lifeline, plus US military backing, and invading Egypt turns into a disaster. Meanwhile, if you want to go for Indonesia, you won't just have one place to conquer, you'll have 17,000 islands stretched over an area wider than the continental US, each with its own jungle, volcano, or swamp ready to devastate your invasion plan. To take Indonesia, you need to launch wave after wave of amphibious assaults, all while fending off a massive, spread-out population of 270 million people, many of whom know how to fight. But keep in mind, their military is trained for this exact kind of warfare, and the terrain favors them at every turn. Also, even if you did make it ashore, you'd be cut off fast. Supply lines would collapse, and the entire region would push back hard. Put simply, expect to be outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and well, out of your depth. Pun intended. Closer to my home, we have Cuba. It's just 90 miles off the Florida coast, and yet no one has managed to take it. The US tried once, in 1961. The Bay of Pigs invasion sent 1,500 CIA-trained Cuban exiles ashore, and it was a disaster. Castro overpowered them in 3 days with a couple of thousands of soldiers and his local militia. After that, he ramped up national defense, armed the civilians, and built a resistance network that still exists today. Even if you took Havana, the interior is still packed with mountains that are perfect for guerrilla warfare. And if the terrain doesn't ruin you, the global backlash probably will, because nobody wants to see a tiny island get steamrolled by a superpower, especially one with old friends in Moscow and Beijing. Alright, now imagine the same kind of resistance, but spaced out over 2,000 miles of jungle. That's Vietnam. Every big power that's tried has ended up bruised and embarrassed. The French failed. The US failed. Even China tried in 1979 and failed. The terrain is 100% unforgiving. Thick jungles, swampy deltas, rugged mountains, and monsoons that flood everything. They're also monsters in guerrilla tactics and not averse to underground tunnels. The Vietnamese military is still big today, and they know the terrain better than you ever will. And the locals have spent generations learning how to make invaders regret showing up. You might get in, but you'll pay for every inch, and won't leave with much intact. Far from the rest of the world, New Zealand is not exactly hostile, but nevertheless, it's completely untouchable. It sits almost 1,200 miles from the nearest major landmass, surrounded by ocean and well out of reach for most invading forces. In fact, just getting there would be a logistical nightmare. You need serious long-range capability, and only a handful of countries have that. Plus, the ones that do are, well, already allies. Even if someone managed to land troops, they'd hit mountains, rolling hills, dense forests, and locals who know how to handle the outdoors. The country's military is small, but its geography does most of the work, and an invader would be operating at the end of a very long, very exposed supply chain. And just know that any serious threat would trigger a response from Australia or the US, making New Zealand not just hard to invade, but flat out not worth it. I mean, they also have, Mount Doom, so there's that. All of Sauron's forces that are still there. You have the Shire, Rivendell. Good luck. Bhutan, however, has a truly giant trick up its sleeve: the Himalayas. The tiny mountain kingdom is wedged between India and China with hardly any roads, and terrain so steep, you'd be lucky just to get boots on the ground. Even if someone did try it, Bhutan has altitude and a landscape that's booby-trapped by nature. Their army is small, but you don't need size when you've got 24/7 high ground. Ask Obi-Wan Kenobi. And don't forget their friends. Any invasion would bring Indian forces crashing in fast. China had to find that out the hard way in 2017 during the Doklam standoff, when Indian troops stepped in to block a Chinese road project in Bhutanese territory. Both sides stared each other down for months, and China ultimately had to back off. Bottom line, if you invade Bhutan, you'll be walking into a mountain war you cannot win. They don't call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires for nothing. Everyone, from Alexander the Great to the Soviets to the United States, has tried to invade and control Afghanistan, struggled immensely, and the majority failed completely. The topography is brutal. Over 75% of the country is mountains or desert, carved up by narrow passes that are perfect for ambushes. There aren't a lot of roads, and once you're in, you're stuck dodging the local militias who know every trail and valley by heart. Winning battles also doesn't mean much here. The Soviets found that out the hard way. So did NATO. Taking a capital is easy. It's the holding on part that's almost impossible. And that's where it all falls apart, and where every empire is eventually packed up and left. Switzerland, on the other hand, might be famous for chocolate and neutrality, but underneath all that is a nation that spent centuries turning itself into a country-sized deterrent. The Alps do a lot of the work. Steep mountains, narrow passes, and a natural layout that forces invaders into choke points. But the Swiss didn't stop there. In the 20th century, they built the National Redoubt, which is a tiny name for a massive defense strategy that wired some of their roads, tunnels, and bridges to blow them up if anyone came marching in. Some highways even double as emergency runways. They've got universal conscription, and most homes are armed. And I don't mean that metaphorically. Every male citizen trains, drills, and keeps a rifle. So if you invade, you're not just facing an army, you're facing everyone. Even Hitler took one look and backed off. That should tell you everything you need to know. Now, Canada might be the second largest country in the world, but most of it is empty, cold, and unforgiving. If you're bold, or foolish enough, to take a stab at invading, you'll be facing dense forests and endless lakes in the east, the Rockies in the west, and frozen tundra up north. In short, every direction is a logistical nightmare. The population also mostly hugs the US border, so coming by land means going through the US first, which is a problem all on its own. And because Canada is part of both NATO and NORAD, any attack would trigger an immediate international response. If you head south, you'll find Australia, a place so hard to invade even the Japanese decided not to bother. It's a continent, not just a country, surrounded by thousands of miles of ocean. To get there will take a massive naval operation, and that's before you even see land. Any invading force would be spotted long before their arrival, since they have satellites, radar, and patrolling subs, so surprise is not an option. Should you be lucky enough to make landfall, you'll be dealing with coastlines wrapped in cities and an interior that's nothing but dry, hot, empty land. Getting an army in through the outback? Good luck. The Australian military is small, but trained for long-range desert warfare and backed by US forces through the ANZUS alliance. Oh, and the Great Barrier Reef? Even that can block you. So, pack light, because you won't be staying long. Since I'm on the subject of hot, dry places, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Yes, it's mostly desert. Just not the regular kind. The empty quarter in the south is the largest sand desert on Earth. It has no roads, no water, just a a whole lot of heat and dust storms. Even if you get through that, you've got modern Saudi defenses to deal with. Their military is well funded, loaded with Western tech, and backed by about 200,000 troops and a hefty paramilitary force. I know, it sounds like an army, but this one is backed by advanced air power, armored divisions, and naval capabilities, all paid for with oil money, and all pointed at you. And let's not forget, both Mecca and Medina can be found here. Any attack and you'll be uniting the whole Muslim world against you. You'll probably draw the US and its allies into the fight. Then again, if you're feeling, silly, you can try to invade Iran, but before you do, you should know that Iran's military is the biggest one in the region. They have over 600,000 active troops, their Revolutionary Guard, as well as hundreds of thousands more in reserve. And these guys have been through it all. I mean, they've warred. Iran, Iraq, Syria. So yeah, they know how to fight. And it's not just boots on the ground. Iran's missiles can easily reach anywhere in the Gulf. They have fortified bunkers tunneled into mountains and proxy militias that are ready to open new fronts if you try anything. You could, bomb it, but Iraq already tried the whole invasion thing and failed. Holding it? Not a chance. As for Turkey, history has already shown us what happens when you try. It's wedged between Europe and the Middle East, and it's been defending its position since before Europe became, Europe. Any army with funny ideas would face over 400,000 active troops, backed by hundreds of thousands of reserves, and a mix of NATO-grade hardware and seriously scary tech. To the north, you'll find the Black Sea. To the east, nothing but mountains. The west, you'd have to force your way through narrow straits like the Dardanelles, which didn't exactly work out for the Allies at Gallipoli. But the real problem is what comes next. Turkey is in NATO. So an attack on Turkey doesn't just trigger a fight with the Turkish military, it brings everyone else to the table, including the US. Push that button, and you're not just starting a war, you're probably starting the war. Of course, living next door to North Korea means South Korea doesn't really get to relax. Like, ever. The capital, Seoul, is just 35 miles from one of the most militarized borders in the world, DMZ. I've been there. And while the North may talk big, the South is more than ready. Millions of trained personnel, mandatory conscription, and cutting-edge tech ready. South Koreans grow up knowing what to do if things go sideways, and the military is constantly training to ensure they can stop it before it gets that far. There are also about 30,000 US troops stationed in the South, acting as both a backup and a warning. If you cross that line, the United States comes with them. That includes ships, air support, and a nuclear umbrella. Which brings me to Japan, where even the Mongols couldn't land. Yeah, that rhymed. They did try. Twice. And both times typhoons destroyed their fleets. In World War II, the US considered a full-scale invasion, and then they didn't. The projected casualties were so high that they chose the atomic bomb instead, which says a lot. As an island nation, Japan has what every defender dreams of: water. Any approaching force has to cross either the Pacific or the Sea of Japan, buying Japan time and giving its self-defense forces a perfect setup. Their military may be defensive on paper, but it's one of the most advanced in the world. Modern fighters, submarines, missile systems, and Aegis-equipped destroyers. And then there's the US-Japan Security Alliance. Long story short, it ain't happening. Although France might be known for its wine and romance, it also has nukes, alliances, and a military that can strike back hard. The Force de Frappe, France's independent nuclear arsenal, includes almost 300 warheads, with submarines and aircraft ready to deliver them. That alone is enough to stop most threats before they even think about crossing a border. And if you're thinking conventional warfare, France still isn't an easy target. It has roughly 200,000 active personnel, homegrown fighter jets, elite special forces, and a military tradition that's seen more wars than most countries have had governments. Plus, France is in NATO. Touch it and you're dragging in 30 other countries. So, stick to visiting for the pastries. It's much safer. There's also the UK, who has a long-standing policy of not being conquered. They're sticking to it. As a matter of fact, the last time anyone succeeded was 1066, and it's been a firm no thanks ever since. Napoleon couldn't do it. Hitler gave up trying. The English Channel has devastated more invasion plans than any army ever has, and it still works. Today, any attacker would have to launch a massive amphibious assault under the watchful eye of the Royal Navy and Air Force. And those forces aren't exactly outdated. Britain has advanced fighter jets, nuclear-powered submarines, 2 new aircraft carriers, and about 215 nuclear warheads ready to go. Okay, now let's talk about Israel. They are no stranger to war, rocket fire, and multi-front threats. And unlike most countries on this list, that pressure isn't theoretical. It is happening right now. Where South Korea has one hostile neighbor to the north, Israel is surrounded on every side. Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, all with active or potential conflict zones. That alone makes defense a national obsession. The Israeli military may be small, around 170,000 active troops, but the reserve force is huge, and everyone is trained. They've also got advanced tanks, elite special forces, and, lest we forget, the Iron Dome, a system that intercepts rockets mid-air that has more than proven itself. And while Israel won't confirm it, the assumption is they've got nuclear weapons. Now add US support, layered defenses, and a history of punching back, and you get a country that might be small, but is nearly impossible to subdue. On the flip side, you get Pakistan. And let's just start with the obvious. Nuclear weapons. Pakistan has somewhere around 165 warheads, and has made it clear that if its existence is on the line, it will not hesitate to use them. But even if nukes weren't in play, you'd still be walking into a fight you probably can't win. Pakistan is one of the largest standing armies in the world, over 650,000 active troops, plus hundreds of thousands in reserve. They also have towering mountains in the north, tribal regions in the west, and a punishing desert in the south. To top it all off, Pakistan has a powerful friend in China. Need I say more? Right next door, you've got India. With over 1.4 billion people, it is the second most populated country on Earth. So, assuming you even manage to land troops, you'd be up against endless resistance, city after city, region after region. And that's before the army shows up. Their military is huge, about 1.45 million active troops, over 1 million more in reserves, and a paramilitary force to match. They also have nukes, roughly 160 to 170 warheads, and a policy of no first use, but a guaranteed second one if you cross the line. Geographically, they have the Himalayas. They've got deserts to stop you in your tracks and oceans guarding the rest. And when it comes to alliances, India has plenty, including regional partners and global backing that would make any invasion politically toxic. Alright, now we get to the big boys, the heavyweights. Let's just say we're entering the do not even try zone, starting with China. The People's Liberation Army is 2 million strong, and that's just the start. They've been pouring billions into the modernization of their stealth fighters, long-range missile systems, and even into naval expansion. In fact, they now have more ships than the US Navy. They're also a nuclear power with 500+ warheads, and the ability to launch them by land, sea, or air. Terrain-wise, they're ringed by mountains, deserts, jungles, and coastlines. So let's say you actually manage to invade and reach the cities. You'll run into tens of millions of people smack bang in the middle of everything. And if you factor in their friendship with countries like Russia and Pakistan, you're not just starting a fight, you're risking a regional meltdown. Next up, Russia. Ask Napoleon. Ask Hitler. You know what? Ask anyone who's ever tried to take it. They all ran into the same problem. Russia will outlast you. Temperatures can be anywhere between 110 degrees Fahrenheit and -60, so your roads will come in the form of mud or ice. In all honesty, the sheer size of the country means that your supply lines will have to be massive, and even if you win battles, you're still nowhere close to winning the war. Then there's the Russian military with over 750,000 active troops, the largest tank fleet in the world, and more than 5,000 nuclear warheads. Even in retreat, Russia follows a policy that could see them use nukes early. Not to win, but to make sure nobody else does. At number 2 on today's list, we have the United States. And yes, since I live here, I can confirm that we are so well defended that most of our enemies will never think of starting a fight. Just looking at our geography, we have oceans on both sides, friendly neighbors, for now, to the north and south, and enough distance from every major power to make wartime logistics a nightmare. And then there's our military. The US doesn't just have the biggest defense budget in the world, it also has a presence in basically every corner of the planet. Fighter jets, warships, submarines, nukes, surveillance networks. You name it, it's already deployed. Let's say you do manage to land troops on US soil. All that gets you is a front row seat to 1.3 million active personnel, 50 state guard units, and a gun-loving population that outarms most countries. Add in nuclear arsenal, over 5,000 warheads, plus NATO and every other alliance America's tied to, yeah, you're not getting far. Finally, North Korea. And there's a reason they're sitting at number 1 on today's list. China and the US have their proxy clashes. Russia flexes whenever it can. But North Korea? Nobody touches it. It's not because North Korea is the strongest. Yes, their military is enormous, over 1 million active troops, but most of their equipment is old, and their air and naval power doesn't come close to matching the US, Russia, or China. The real problem is, well, everything else. You see, North Korea is a nuclear-armed state run by a government that actually might use its weapons. They've got somewhere between 30 and 50 warheads, and unlike other powers, there's no real doctrine of restraint. If the regime thinks it's cornered, it won't wait. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, Seoul, the capital of South Korea I mentioned earlier, is one of the world's most densely populated cities in the world. At this very minute, North Korea has thousands of artillery pieces aimed right at it, buried in hardened positions. Even a limited strike would turn Seoul into a firestorm in minutes. And then there's China. North Korea is unpredictable, but it's not alone. A full-scale invasion could drag Beijing into the conflict and risk a global war. So, North Korea might not be the strongest country on Earth, but trying to invade it would be the fastest way to start something that nobody can finish. And that's a wrap. What'd you think? Did I leave some out, or did I get the order wrong? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts. And if you like this kind of stuff, you'll love our related video, 25 secret locations governments don't want you to know about. It comes with all the hidden bunkers, off-limit zones, and underground vaults your government quietly hopes you never Google. As always, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you again next time.